Would you like to take a trip back through industrial history without leaving your seat? Then come with us along the Manchester Ship Canal. This is the pier head at Liverpool, and we are on board the MV Royal Iris of the Mersey, owned by the Mersey Ferries Company. Normally, during the day, this boat sails from Liverpool across the River Mersey to Seacombe and Woodside on the Wirral Peninsula, and back to Liverpool Pier Head. Through the summer months, these boats are occasionally taken off their normal ferrying duties and are used to make special cruises, one of which is the cruise along the Manchester Ship Canal from Liverpool to Salford Quays, Manchester. Our trip today is such an occasion, and we will be travelling the full 36-mile length of the canal. Leaving the world-famous skyline behind us, we sail the few miles to the other side of the River Mersey to reach the commencement of the canal at Eastham. It's amazing to think that as early as 1660, proposals were suggested that the rivers Mersey and Irwell should become navigable, linking Manchester to the Mersey estuary. In fact, the estuary had been used by craft from prehistoric times, and by 1698 ships coming up from Liverpool on the tide were using berths at Bank Quay, Warrington, which was then the limit of the navigation. It was proposed in 1712 by Thomas Steers, a Manchester merchant, that the two rivers could be made navigable through to Manchester by building weirs, each one being bypassed by locks. This came to fruition in 1734, when it was possible for craft to make the journey to Manchester. These sailing craft, known as Mersey flats, had to be of small draught owing to the shallow water. They were 60 feet long with a beam of 12 feet and capable of carrying 60 tons. Subsequently, larger craft were built capable of carrying loads up to 100 tons. When the flats were unable to use sail, they were hauled by men from towpaths constructed alongside the waterway, but at a later date horses replaced the manpower. Whilst this was the only means of travel by water through to Manchester, it was of poor navigation, and major problems existed throughout, especially during neap tides, periods of drought or flood, and strong easterly winds holding back the tide in the estuary. Eastham Lock, the first on the canal, was completed in May 1891 and connects the River Mersey to the canal system. The difference in water level between the river and the canal is approximately 12 feet, depending on the tide at the time of entry. From the starting point at sea level, other locks on the system raise the water level to 76 feet above sea level at Manchester. The lock gates which seal the canal weigh 85 tons each. By the second half of the 19th century, Manchester was a city in decline, with its trade and manufacturing throttled by the crippling transport charges exacted by the Liverpool Dock Board and the railway companies. 80% of Manchester's overseas trade had to pass through Liverpool, and the board exploited this monopoly to the full. To revitalise trade, the proposal to bring ocean-going shipping directly to Manchester bypassing Liverpool, was revived, but the difficulties were immense, and there were many who thought that such a scheme was impossible to achieve. Around 1824, thoughts and discussions took place about improving the waterway link from Liverpool to Manchester, and in 1825 Matthew Headley, a Manchester grocer, commissioned a survey by the engineer Robert Stevenson, who proposed that a canal should be built from the Dee estuary below Padgate, with docks at Dorpool near Heswall, across the Wirral Peninsula direct to South Manchester via Lymm and Altrincham, a distance of 45 miles, cutting out the Mersey and the domination of Liverpool altogether. But this proposal never reached Parliament and was ultimately scrapped altogether, which was just as well, really, for what was, in 1825, a splendid natural anchorage at Dorpool is now only a shallow, muddy creek due to the Dee estuary silting up. The real start of the present-day canal commenced with a meeting called by Daniel Adamson, a Manchester manufacturer, at his home in Didsbury on the 27th of June 1882. Present at the meeting were prominent civic leaders and businessmen from the city and surrounding area. Plans were drawn up by Edward Leader Williams, who, incidentally, had also designed the Anderton boat lift at Northwich some 30 years before. The first bill deposited at Parliament, seeking the necessary powers to proceed, being made in December of that year. 2 attempts failed, mainly due to the opposition from the Liverpool Docks Board and the railway companies. But finally, after 3 years, the bill received royal assent on the 6th of August, 1885. The promoters then had to raise £5 million, nearly £500 million in today's money, as the first part of the construction costs. They were also required to purchase the Bridgewater Canal, all within a 2-year deadline set by Parliament. The promoters, after many difficulties, finally succeeded in raising the money. Just. And on the 11th of November 1887, Lord Egerton of Tatton cut the first sod at Eastham, and work on the Big Ditch, as it was affectionately known, commenced. The hills, seen at times along the canal, are the result of the man-made mountains created by the removal of rock, earth, etc. from the canal site. This first one was named Mount Manistee after one of the project engineers. These heaps of crushed glass are ready to be shipped overseas, where it will be recycled and imported back into the UK as bottles. The canal here, which links to the Manchester Ship Canal via locks, is the Shropshire Union Canal, originally the Ellesmere Canal. It brought goods from Ellesmere in Shropshire for export, hence the name Ellesmere Port. This is the National Boat Museum, a living museum with a unique collection of traditional canal boats, exhibitions, engines, a blacksmith's forge, and many other attractions, together with examples of methods of working on the canals in the early days. At the start of the construction of the canal, a railway was built the full 36-mile length of the route to supply materials and to facilitate the removal and transfer of spoil, rock and sand. On completion of the canal, the Manchester Ship Canal Company had its own railway system, parts of which are still in use today. The canal is 30 metres wide and was initially 6 metres deep throughout most of its length. Then, in 1909, to cater for deeper draught vessels, the water level of the canal was raised to give a new depth of 8 metres. And some 20 years later, the stretch between Eastham and the Stanlow oil docks was increased to 9 metres depth to accommodate the large oil tankers. The Shell Oil Refinery at Stanlow. This was built to enable crude oil to be refined in Britain, whereas previously it had been refined in the country of origin and shipped in tankers to the United Kingdom. Since this refinery was built, crude oil is brought to the refinery through pipelines, and the tankers seen at the oil docks today arrive empty and carry the refined oil out to their final destinations. An army of navvies, 16,000 at the peak, was employed together with stonemasons, carpenters, bricklayers, and all the other crafts necessary for the construction of the canal, with the total cost of the project coming to £15 million, which would equate with well over £1 billion in today's money. The construction of the canal necessitated huge amounts of equipment, including 97 steam excavators, 197 locomotives, 6,300 trucks and wagons, 194 cranes, 212 steam pumps, 182 steam engines, 59 pile engines, and 196 horses. The first section of the canal opened in July 1891 as far as Ellesmere Port. Later that year, the Ellesmere Port to Saltport at the mouth of the River Weaver was opened. 11 miles of the canal were now in use, and the Norwegian timber vessel Deodata from Shediac, New Brunswick, after being towed along the canal by tug, was the first foreign ship to berth at Saltport on November the 10th, 1891, and left again a week later with a full cargo of salt. This was the site of Saltport, where salt was shipped in barges along the River Weaver from the salt mines in the Northwich area to be loaded into ocean-going vessels. Salt was an important commodity, and British salt was of very good quality. The incoming cargoes consisted mainly of vast quantities of timber from overseas. The completion of this canal in 1894 spelt the death knell of Saltport, and shipping was diverted to Runcorn docks and beyond. Moving Moving on, we pass Western Point, where a chemical company, previously ICI, has a plant so large that it has its own electricity generating station. The canal company itself uses its water to generate electricity, the surplus of which is fed into the national grid. On the left can be seen the Weaver sluices, built to control the flow of water from the River Weaver into the Mersey estuary. This church at Western Point, Runcorn, now derelict, was known as the Sailors' Church. In the 1760s, the Duke of Bridgewater built a barge canal from his collieries at Worsley through to Manchester. Later, in 1776, he extended this canal to Runcorn with access into the River Mersey. This canal made engineering history, as it was the first to be thrown across a river by aqueduct at Barton, and contributed greatly to the growing prosperity of the district. This whole area is well served by canals. The Sankey Navigation at Widnes was the first in Britain, carrying coal from the mines at St Helens to the Mersey at Spike Island, Widnes. Later, the coal was taken by railway to Garston Docks, with its ability to handle larger ships, and also because the Mersey estuary was dangerous above Garston, with narrow channels and sandbanks. This coal was mainly exported to Ireland to fuel the increasing number of steamships that were being built. Other canals include the Shropshire Union Canal at Ellesmere Port, Rochdale Canal, Trent and Mersey Canal, Manchester Bolton Bury Canal, Lancaster and Leeds-Liverpool canals. Runcorn docks are on the right. There are 21 bridges over the canal, consisting of 7 swing bridges, 2 new lift bridges, 5 carrying railways, although 1 is not now used, and 7 high-level road bridges. Of the 5 railways traversing the course of the canal, 4 were at ground level, and provision had to be made for deviations to be made at a higher level. This required the track to be removed for a mile from each side of the canal, and bridges built to enable traffic to pass along the canal underneath, the track then being relaid. These deviation bridges were built of sandstone blocks rather than bricks. The 5th bridge, the Britannia Railway Bridge, built in 1864, is 75 feet above water level and carries the London to Liverpool railway line over the quarter-mile Runcorn Gap. This 2nd bridge links Runcorn and Widnes by road, and was built to replace the transporter bridge, which had been sited 50 yards to the east. Built in 1905, it was, for over 50 years, a valuable means of crossing the river, but by the late 1950s had become unable to cope with the volume of traffic. Sadly, the only remaining visible evidence of this bridge are the approach roads on each side of the river. The new bridge, designed to carry 9,000 vehicles per hour, was opened in 1961 and relieved the congestion for a while. But during the 1990s, further widening work had to be made in order to cope with the increased volume of traffic, which at peak times can be nearly 10 times the original estimate, causing traffic problems. Projections on future traffic patterns and volumes suggest that this bridge will be unable to cope by 2010. Based on this survey, plans have been drawn up for another bridge crossing the river about half a mile to the east, near Moor. The projected cost of this new bridge is 300 million, and work is expected to start in 2005. We now see the first of the swing bridges on the canal at Old Quay, Runcorn. The swing bridges are so constructed that each rests on an annular girder approximately 9 metres in diameter, with a central pivot and an upper roller path. Sunk into a concrete base is the lower roller path, with 60 cast iron rollers. A toothed rack is bolted onto the annular girder, and this is set in motion by hydraulic power working through pinions. We have been joined by HMS Biter, a Royal Navy fast training boat. She will accompany us through to Manchester, sharing the locks and opening of the swing bridges as we go. Here are the 8 cooling towers of the Fiddler's Ferry power station, which dominates the landscape for miles around Widnes and the surrounding countryside. This station is coal-fired and uses a high-grade, low-sulphur content coal imported from Colombia and transported by rail from Seaforth Docks in Liverpool. We are now approaching the Moor Lane swing bridge. This is the second of the railway bridges we will see today, this one carrying the West Coast Main Line at Acton Grange. It was here that the Canal Company built one of the many villages along the route of the canal to house some of the thousands of navvies engaged on its construction. We're now approaching the town of Warrington, where 3 swing bridges carry A roads across the canal. The first one is the main A56 to Chester, the second the A49 to the south, and finally the A50 to the east. These swing bridges cause much congestion in the town, especially during rush hours. There is a high-level cantilever bridge, known mainly to the locals as an alternative, but it does have a 3-ton weight limit restriction for motor vehicles. This bridge used to carry the Warrington to Manchester Railway, which closed in the early 80s. We're now entering the Latchford locks. The stone used in the construction of all the locks on the canal originated from Penryn in Cornwall. There were several disasters during the construction. The contractor, Thomas Walker, died suddenly. Violent floods broke through the earthworks, destroying months of toil, and in some places submerging equipment to a depth of 40 feet. In the winter of 1891, the Bridgewater Canal, at that time the company's only profit-making asset, froze over and was impassable for months. Money ran desperately short, and the day was only saved when Manchester City Council stepped in with loans to keep the project afloat. Accidents were commonplace, and a series of first aid stations and 3 base hospitals, temporary wooden structures were set up, and Liverpool orthopaedic surgeon Robert Jones was appointed in 1888 to supervise what is thought to be the first organised accident and emergency service in the history of British surgery. Between 1888 and 1893, there were over 3,000 major accidents, quite apart from illnesses such as pneumonia and rheumatic fever, also treated by the medical team. canal is traversed by two motorways via high-level bridges. First the M6 and further on the M60 at Barton. By 1893, the canal was at last completely navigable, and on the 7th of December of that year, the directors of the company made the first full passage. On New Year's Day, 1894, to mark the commercial opening of the canal, Samuel Platt's steam yacht, the Norseman, suitably decorated, led a procession of 71 ships from Latchford to the terminal docks at Salford, with the Pioneer, a steamer owned by the Cooperative Wholesale Society, having the honour of unloading the first cargo of sugar brought in from Rouen in France. Cargoes ready for shipment included pig iron and white calico. The viaduct at Thelwall, which we are now approaching, at one time carried 6 carriageways, 3 northbound and 3 southbound. Later, due to increases in the volume of traffic, a new viaduct was built alongside the original. Today, southbound traffic uses the new bridge. This is the Warburton High Level Bridge, crossed only on the payment of a toll. The Cadishead High Level Deviation Bridge carries the Manchester to Liverpool Railway via Warrington. The next sluices and locks are at Earlham. After passing beneath the M60 motorway at Barton, we see the twin towers of the Trafford Centre, a large retail outlet which attracts millions of people each year. We now reach the two swing bridges at Barton, the first carrying a road. The second, slightly different in design to others on the canal, is an aqueduct carrying the Bridgewater Canal. The swinging tank and the two ends of the canal are sealed with hinged doors closed by hydraulic rams. At each end is a U-shaped piece of iron 12 inches thick and rubber shod on both sides. When the doors are closed and the water is sealed in the tank, these pieces can be slid out hydraulically to leave gaps wide enough for the tank to swing freely. The weight of the aqueduct, full of water, is 1,400 tons. These heaps of scrap metal are ready to be shipped to Spain, where the metal will be recycled, turned into refrigerators, washing machines, etc., and re-imported into Britain. Trafford Park was the world's first and is the world's largest industrial estate, lying along the south bank for the next 3 miles. The new lift bridge we are now approaching was completed in 1994 and named the Centenary Bridge to commemorate the canal's centenary. It is a vital link between Trafford Park and the M602 motorway. Spanning 43 metres, it was the first low-level opening bridge to be built over the canal since its opening in 1894. It opens to canal traffic vertically with an elevator-style deck that moves between two sets of towers. The deck is lifted via two hydraulically driven double-drum winches positioned centrally between the two lifting towers. Ships are able to pass safely underneath as the deck can be lifted some 16 metres, giving a clearance of nearly 23 metres above canal water level. We now reach mowed wheel locks, where on the 21st of May 1894 Queen Victoria performed the opening ceremony from the royal yacht Enchantress to a large and enthusiastic crowd. Over 1 million people came to watch, undaunted by the indifferent weather. After exiting the mowed wheel locks, we have completed the rise to the water level at Manchester. Directly ahead, we see the Millennium Lift Footbridge, the second newly completed low-level opening bridge, which crosses the canal to connect the recently completed Imperial War Museum North with the Lowry Centre complex. This bridge also lifts vertically to allow canal traffic to pass safely underneath. The Pink Detroit Bridge, formerly a railway swing bridge which crossed the canal alongside Trafford Road, was towed to this site in April 1988 and renovated to provide a pedestrian walkway. The vessel passing us is the WD-7, a dredger owned by the Westminster Dredging Company, which has the contract for all dredging and maintenance work required along the canal. Salford Quays, which we're now approaching, has been given a completely new look over the last few years and is now the location for some 350 homes and 120 businesses employing over 3,500 people and a centre for numerous leisure and recreational activities. Old Trafford, the theatre of dreams. Manchester United's football stadium. The new Lowry Art Gallery and Lowry Opera Centre, seen here, are home for the performing arts and many of the works of Grace Lowry, and are buildings of exceptional architectural merit. The centre contains 1,600 to 1,700 seat theatre for drama and opera, as well as a smaller 400 seat theatre, and attracts visiting national and international opera, dance, musical and drama companies, taking the city and its people forward into the 21st century. This approach to Salford Quays signals the end of our voyage today, and we do hope that you have enjoyed the trip with us.